Congressman Jim Jordan, Freedom Caucus member, friend of the program, who's been kicking some serious butt in Washington along with Mark Meadows and a few others. You know, I'm watching the Schumer Shift Sham show. There's no new facts here. This is now 24 hours of regurgitation. And 24 more hours of regurgitation and 16 hours of questions on regurgitation. And then a ridiculous plea by the Democrats in the House that have the sole power to impeach to subpoena new witnesses because their slam dunk case isn't so slam dunk.
No, it's not, Deshaun, and thanks for what you've been doing to get the truth out to the American people. When Jerry Nadler said cover up, I mean, think of the audacity. Cover up? The Democrats did 17 depositions in a bunker in the basement of the Capitol that only a handful of members of Congress were allowed to attend. The president's lawyers couldn't attend. Other members of Congress who weren't on those committees couldn't attend. The American people couldn't see it. And yet now Nadler has the gall to start talking about a cover-up in the Senate. As Pat Cipollone said, he was right on target with his comments. This is ridiculous. And I think as you know, the American people see it for what it is.
Explain, because most people are busy that I know working every day. In other words, the people that work real hard, they're 12, 14, 16 hours a day, and they get up in the morning and they make breakfast for their kids and they shovel some coffee down their throat and they put in their stressful 12, 13, 14 hours a day, and they come home and cook dinner and try and help the kids study, have maybe 20 seconds of fun time and put them to bed. To pay their taxes, obey the laws, and make the country great. They're not following this as closely as we are, and I think it benefits them to hear the 4 facts that never change.
Yeah, 4 facts. 1, we have the transcript.
You can say it slow. By the way, you don't have to say it fast like on TV. Say it slow.
The transcript that the Democrats never thought the president would release. The transcripts which shows clearly there was no quid pro quo. Remember, the day after the call, President Zelensky is in a meeting in Kyiv with Ambassador Volker, Sondland, and Taylor, and President Zelensky says the call was fine. There's laughter on the call. President Zelensky says, hey, Mr. President, we're going to drain the swamp here like you're doing in Washington. That's the type of call it was. So we have the transcript itself, which shows that there was no problem with this call. Second, both individuals who were on the call, who talked to each other, President Trump, President Zelensky, have repeatedly said there was no pressure, there was no pushing, there was no linkage of any type of release of the money for an investigation that Ukraine was going to promise or announce or do. Never happened. Third, critical fact. At the time of the call, Ukraine didn't even know aid was on pause. They didn't learn until a month later when Politico ran the article on August 28th. They didn't know. So how could there be any pressure if they didn't even know that aid was being held up? And fourth fact, and the most important one, and this is the one that no matter how many presumptions, assumptions, and hearsay evidence they bring forward, they can't change one fundamental fact. The Ukrainians never did a thing, took no action to get the aid released. There was never an investigation started. There was never a promise of an investigation that was going to start later. There was never an announcement of an investigation that would happen at some point. It never happened. So those 4 facts have not changed, will not change, will never change. But the Democrats don't care because they've been out to get this president since July 31st, 2016, when they opened up the Trump-Russia investigation, went to a secret court, lied 17 times to that court so they could go spy on the Trump campaign. They started then, and it will never stop because they've been out to get this guy from the get-go.
Okay. Now, I'll add a 5th fact that'll never change. There are 5 high-level meetings, even including the vice president who was on this show yesterday. 5 of them. Not after the call. And by the way, there were 2 calls. We're going to be precise, and the president voluntarily released the calls. At no time did they mention aid, not once. They did talk about corruption. The president said, could you do us a favor and get to the bottom, separate and apart from Russian interference? A Ukraine court and Politico, January 11, 2017, both state unequivocally that Ukraine did interfere in the 2016 election. He said, can you do us a favor and get to the bottom of that? And as it relates to, quid pro quo Joe and Hunter, well, the president must faithfully execute the laws, Mr. Jordan. But regardless of any of that, 5 high-level meetings post that call, and not one time was aid mentioned. Is that a fact, too?
No, that is definitely a fact. Important meetings with senior U.S. officials, U.S. senators, the Vice President of the United States, the National Security Director, senior U.S. officials where they meet with President Zelensky in Kyiv and Warsaw. Never once does any linking of an investigation to the release of the security assistance dollars, linking of the investigation to any type of meeting with President Trump ever come up. But you know what does come up? In the last 2 of those meetings, the September 2nd meeting with Vice President Pence and President Zelensky, and the September 5th meeting with Senators Murphy and Johnson and President Zelensky, They do raise the issue of the aid then because they were on notice that the aid was being paused. And they bring up the aid, but they never bring up this idea that they're going to do an investigation. There's ever linking the aid to anything else. So that is critical facts, critical things that happen that the Democrats just want to gloss over because they're, like we said, they're out to get this president.
Well, I think they have been forever. Now, I'm in the business where I'm very grateful to my audience, Jim Jordan, and I mean that sincerely. I'm a dishwasher. I'm a former house painter. I know you were a wrestler, and I know you worked hard your whole life. I didn't have money to finish college. I didn't have any more money. I ran out. My parents didn't have the money for that, and I had good grades too. And I'm proud of my background. And I worked in construction.
You appreciate this country. That's why you appreciate this country so much. What it's given you, and it's why the people who vote for President Trump are people just like you and I, who came from. My dad was a union worker for General Motors. They're the people this president's fighting for, and they get it.
You mean like the two Americas we watched last week? The president signing a huge China deal with $220 billion for 2 years that impacts auto workers like your dad and manufacturers and service industry people and the energy sector and our great American farmers. And while Nancy Pelosi has given out a commemorative pins prayerfully and somberly taking smiley pictures with them, and now the president in Davos?
Yeah. Oh, golly. I mean, Americans appreciate that this president is doing what he said, draining the swamp. And the bottom line is this. When you drain the swamp fights back. And that's what we're seeing. They started with we were thinking about this today, Sean. They started with the Michael Cohen hearing. That was going to be it. Then it was this emoluments clause issue. Then it was, we're going to get the president and the first family with the White House security clearance issue. That's going to be, remember then they said, we're going to get they sued Mazars, his accounting firm, every single business record they're going after of the president. Then they said, no. Jerry Nadler sent 80 different letters out to people trying to get all kinds of documents, big old fishing expedition. And then, of course, it was the Mueller investigation that was supposed to be the end-all, be-all, save-all for the Dem. They've tried every single thing, and none of them worked. And guess what? The day after Bob Mueller testified, July 24th, and that was a complete flop. Within 24 hours is the call with President Trump and President Zelensky, and everyone on that call, they had more than a dozen people listening to that call. Only one person, Lieutenant Colonel Vindman, thought it was a problem. What's he do? He runs off and talks to the whistleblower, and it started this whole crazy thing we've now been living through for 4 months. And I keep coming back to this. They're never going to quit. We just need to understand that. That's why what you're doing is so important, informing the American people, because they're never going to stop.
And did you see the article in the whistleblower? Apparently days into the administration was talking about, according to a report today, Real Clear Politics investigation, talking about getting rid of Trump on the early days of the Trump administration as an Obama holdover. Did you read that, Jim Jordan?
I haven't read it yet, but I mean, it doesn't surprise me.
That's why you need to listen 3 hours a day. All right, as we continue, Jim Jordan is now with us. The one thing that's irking me, and we'll have our constitutional experts after the news at the bottom of the hour, is the whole idea that now Senate Republicans might cave to the notion that the slam dunk case that they did so urgently so they can go on vacation and sign so prayerfully and somberly with special commemorative impeachment pens and pose for pictures with. Now they want the Senate to take on their constitutional role, which is the House's, the sole power to impeach, and bring in new people as witnesses. I have a big problem with the Senate and the Senate Republicans in particular taking on the constitutional role of the House Democrats.
No, you're so right, Sean. Look, they wanted these witnesses. They should have brought them. They didn't do it. And frankly, if they're going to go down this road next week, if there's a decision to go down this road of witnesses, if you're going to start down the road, you got to go all the way to the end. If you're going to insist and Mick Mulvaney and John Bolton are going to be called in, then by golly, let's have the whistleblower come in. And let's have Hunter Biden. I mean, if you're going to start down this road, that to me seems only fair. And a lot of people have talked about that. But the idea that the idea that the individual who started it all, the whistleblower, when Adam Schiff first told us, we look forward to hearing from the whistleblower. Our office had no contact with the whistleblower. Of course, we found out both those statements turned out to be false. The idea that we never got to talk to that individual and find out who were the sources of information, if any, how did this all start? So that to me is a problem. If you're going to go down this road, I think you got to go all the way down it. I hope they don't. I don't think it's warranted. They should have done it if they were going to go there in the House. But if they do, you got to bring them all in then.
Well, I agree. And the reciprocity issue, I guess, will come up. What about executive privilege? Where's that going to end up in this?
Yeah, I mean, if they go this way, it does serious damage to the separation of power. Think about one of the articles that the Democrats have brought against the president. obstruction of Congress. One of my colleagues said it best. He said obstruction of Congress is what the founders called separation of powers. So there will be damage done to how our system is supposed to work, this great system our founders gave us. And I'm nervous about that. I hope they don't go there, but if they do, it's got to be fair. You got to go all the way down that road and make sure that if they're going to bring in Bolton, we're going to bring in the whistleblower. If they're going to bring in someone else, we're going to bring in Hunter Biden. I mean, they're witnesses. We didn't get to call any of our witnesses in the House. The only witnesses that we got to see were the ones Adam Schiff subpoenaed. And then we said, okay, some of those that you actually subpoenaed, like Ambassador Volker, he actually said good things and was a good witness for the president. We'd like for him to come to the hearing. But all the witnesses were initially called by Adam Schiff, and he's the one who issued the subpoenas.
Now they want witnesses they didn't subpoena, and they want the Senate to do their constitutional job. No way. All right, Jim Jordan, great work as always.